So hi everyone and welcome. My name is Cheryl Buckwalter and I'm going to be facilitating today's webinar that Steve Zion will be presenting. So as Rex just said though, we're really happy that we're able to record these webinars and make them available to you. So the website is on the screen. It's chwd.org and then just a /community. There will be information about other classes as well or other webinars coming up. I want to encourage everyone to please enter your questions into the chat because we will be asking Steve your questions and getting answers. And then also there will be a survey sent out after the webinar. And I want to encourage everybody to complete the survey. And as a registered attendee, Rex is going to tell you in just a moment about 2 opportunities to win gift cards. So let me please introduce Rex Muir to you with Citrus Heights Water District.
Thank you, Cheryl, and welcome everybody to our webinar. These are a part of a series of webinars that we've been giving, and if you'd like to view other topics off on these webinars, they are available off of our website over at chwd.org. So go over there, go to our water efficiency page, and there's a link to all of the classes on a itemized list for you. It's pretty straightforward. So thank you and welcome. I do want to mention a couple things that we offer over at Citrus Heights Water District. We do offer WaterWise house calls. So if you would like us to come out and take a look at your irrigation system and run it and diagnose if it's running to its optimum efficiency, we can do that. We would write up some of the issues we see that could be causing some inefficiencies, and we can set your timer for you. So please give us a call. That's a free service. You just have to call and schedule it. We also have some, yeah, that's a great service. Yeah. And I urge anybody and everybody that's a customer to take advantage of it. Another thing we do are rebates. We have rebates for high efficiency toilets and for high efficiency clothes washers and for pressure reducing valves. So you can find all the details on our website again at chwd.org. And there's links to each one of those programs right on the website.
Great.
So let me remind everybody one more thing. We do have a raffle for our customers. Now, if you're a customer and you attend this webinar, you'll be eligible for a $50 gift card to Green Acres Nursery, which is opening up probably next week over here in Citrus Heights at the corner of Greenback and San Juan. So keep that in mind that we'll be contacting you if you are drawn, and you will also be eligible to win a $25 gift card to Green Acres if you complete the survey, fill it out, submit it. You do need to be a Citrus Heights Water District customer to be entered into either raffle, though. I just want to stress that, and please take the survey. And thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. And
you're welcome. You're welcome, Rex. Okay, so we are now going to turn it over to Steve Zion. He is going to be presenting Prevent Pests with Healthy Soil and Eco-Friendly Tools That Work. Tried and true techniques. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you, Cheryl. While all of you enjoy your lunch, I'm going to share some tools and techniques I've utilized over 45 years working as a horticultural professional, managing both a retail nursery and a landscape maintenance business, always using only organic horticultural practices. If you follow these strategies, you can grow your own beautiful botanical wonderland organically with few, if any, pest problems. Now, many of you might have pests. There are quite a few of them out in the garden and the landscape. These are a few of them that you may see. But there are lots of things that you don't know. And do they all deserve to die? That's a baby ladybug. And each one of these little capsules are anywhere from 1 to 25 worm eggs. These eggs on these long strands hatch into a critter called an aphid lion that eats lots of aphids. This looks like a caterpillar that might attack your tomatoes or your cabbage, but in fact, this is a syrphid fly larva that eats aphids. Now, there are a lot of aphids around in our area, and what you might also see is these tan, swollen things that look a little bit like swollen aphids. Well, that's exactly what they are. What happened was a little tiny wasp laid its egg inside the aphid. The egg hatches, eats the inside of the aphid, causing it to swell up and turn tan. And then you'll see some of these tan aphids have little holes in the back, and that's when the mature wasp came out and attacked or will mate and attack additional aphids. If you see these swollen aphids, they're called mummies. You don't have to do anything for aphid control. They're going to do the job for you. So when you're out there in the garden and landscape, just because you see something that you don't know, identify it before you kill it, okay? Now, not all pests or not all problems are caused by pests. For example, this is sunburn. This is leaf scorch from either high temperatures or high winds. This is swelling due to improper irrigation. The spots on these leaves are caused by the spikes on that fruit, not by a pest. And that's frost damage. So just because you see what appear to be pest problems does not mean it's automatically a pest, and you shouldn't automatically be spraying pesticides. So it's really important that when you're thinking about identification and treatment of a pest problem, that you first identify the pest. But not only that, you have to identify if there are any beneficial insects out there that will control that guy, those pests. And what's most important, and very few people do, is you need to determine the cause of the problem. We have to realize that pests are only a symptom of the problem. You treat the pest up in the foliage and they'll be gone, but the conditions that created the pest problem are still there, and that's usually in the soil. What we need to do is determine what the cause of the problem is and treat the cause. It's usually some sort of practice that we're dealing with in reference to the soil. If we fix the soil, we remove the cause of the problem, and not only do we eliminate the current pest, but we won't be bothered with that pest for the rest of the season and potentially seasons on in the future. So how do we best manage plant pests? We utilize a multiple environmentally sound techniques and control methods for long-term prevention by treating the cause of the problem. And only when the pests exceed tolerance levels do we treat the symptom of the problem, utilizing tools and techniques that minimize harm to humans and the environment. So we need to base our pest management program on the pest management triangle, or IPM triangle. We need a strong foundation. We need to spend most of our energy utilizing cultural techniques like fertilization, proper irrigation, proper plant selection. Then we advance to physical and mechanical controls, things like traps for insects, mulch for weeds. And then we want to advance to biological predators, parasites, beneficial nematodes. And if we still have a pest problem, which is going to be rare, then you break out the least toxic and organic chemicals that are available. And only when those fail do you utilize the conventional pesticides that typically kill all sorts of things, including many beneficials. And so you really want to avoid that. In my 45 years of managing a retail nursery and numerous landscapes in the area, we never had to utilize those conventional pesticides. Now we realize that we want to prevent the pests, and soil management can prevent 95% of your pest problems. You start with proper irrigation. by deep and infrequent, so you get those nice deep roots that are going to be able to absorb water and nutrients from a large area. You want to avoid getting the foliage wet. You apply the irrigation under the foliage. You want to, and when there's places where you can't avoid wetting the foliage, like a lawn, you want to water early in the morning. In particular, avoid watering late in the day. If you water late in the day, those plants will have wet foliage for more than 4 hours all night, and really all night long. If they're wet for more than 4 hours, you're creating the ideal conditions for fungal diseases. So next, we want to create a happy, healthy, and diverse living soil. That's the soil on the left. Has an abundance of beneficial microscopic organisms and macroscopic organisms, lots of worms, and you end up with that nice earthy looking soil. And look at the root system and look at the lawn that's above there, that nice dense thick lawn. Weeds aren't going to be able to pop up in that. Then on the right, we've got dirt. Maybe you've been using synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, and you're trying to grow a lawn, but the conditions in that soil, that dead soil, is basically only capable of producing good stand of weeds. Now, when you talk about trees, again, here on the left side, we've got a healthy soil that is abundant and a diverse soil population of beneficial microbes. They aerate the soil, so you look at the size of that root system. That root system's huge, can obtain water and nutrients from a very, very large area. Soil on the right's unhealthy. You've been maybe using synthetic fertilizers and pesticides that kill the beneficial microbes, so the soil becomes compacted. You're feeding the roots directly, so there's no reason for those roots to grow, making the plant have a small root system. And just look at the health of the tree on the right. Which side of that tree do you think is going to be better capable of resisting pest attack? Now realize that a healthy soil, we want to have the continued capacity of that soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains microbes, plants, and animals. That's what a healthy soil is. Now realize a single teaspoon of soil contains more microscopic organisms than there are people on Earth. So if you were out in the garden earlier today and you've got a little soil underneath those fingernails, imagine all the critters that are in there. So we've got this healthy soil that has this abundance and diversity of all sorts of microscopic organisms. And so far, the scientists have been working very, very hard to identify them, and they've identified a whopping 1% of what's out there, okay? So what are the benefits of having a healthy soil and having all of these microscopic organisms there? They improve the structure of your soil. You can see in that graphic on the right, there's all sorts of different sized pore spaces. And so if you've got a clay soil, they're going to open up that clay soil and create those large pore spaces so water can penetrate into the soil and percolate through, so roots and biology can move through that soil. Those large pore spaces, after it rains or you irrigate, will drain out by the force of gravity, allowing air into the soil. The microscopic organisms make nutrients available to the plants. They actually help the plants communicate. Yes, plants do talk to each other. And if you're growing a vegetable garden, they will help improve the yield and the nutritional quality of your vegetables. They create healthy plants that are more capable of resisting pests. And many of these beneficial organisms actually prevent and fight off and eradicate pests that the plants are having to deal with. So how do we maintain a healthy soil? We start by using only organic fertilizers. These synthetic fertilizers are high in salts and they dry out and kill the beneficial organisms. So use organic fertilizers. Look for the OMRI logo and in California, the Organic Input Materials logo. That will tell you that those are organic fertilizers. We need to avoid or minimize tillage. When you're tilling the soil, you're fluffing it up, but you're killing all of those beneficial microscopic organisms that actually create that structure, that diversity of pore spaces. Obviously, we need to minimize pesticide use because it's going to kill the microbes in the soil. And if you do need to use pesticides, use only least toxic and preferably organic pesticides. Also, it's important to keep off the soils when it's wet. Whenever you walk on wet soil, you compact it, you squeeze out and crush those large pore spaces that are so important to the biological function of your soil. And if you go home, if you only go home with one thing during this webinar, this is it. Keep the soil covered at all times. Living plants, for example, many people don't know, but 45% of up to 45% of the energy that plant produces goes to feeding the soil biology. They exude chemicals like proteins, sugars, and carbohydrates, kind of like cakes and cookies, to feed these guys. Now, if the plant needs phosphorus, they will exude particular chemicals to stimulate those microbes that provide the plant phosphorus to do a better job. You also want to have mulch, compost, and worm castings on the surface of the soil so that worms every night will come up to the surface of the soil, feed on that material, and then go back down. They are Mother Nature's rototillers, so you don't have to till the soil. So you also want to, can reduce stress and prevent pests by putting in the right plant in the right place, by choosing climate and soil appropriate plants such as California natives and Mediterranean plants for our landscapes. We want to create a habitat for beneficial insects. Realize that for many of the beneficial insects, part of their life cycle, they only feed on pollen and nectar. So we need a diversity of flowering plants and flowers that bloom for a long period of time, so we have blooms all year long. And obviously we need to minimize the use of pesticides so we're not killing the beneficial insects. Proper pruning will open up the plant to reduce disease problems. And we can use resistant varieties. Some of you, if you've been growing tomato plants, you may see on the seed packet or the little tag, the little letters VFNT. That means it's resistant to those various pest problems. There are physical and mechanical controls. Those would include things like traps, water blast. You can just blast off aphids, whiteflies, mealybugs, and even powdery mildew. There are barriers such as sticky barriers and copper barriers to keep out a variety of pests. Mulch to control weeds, and there's what's called sheet mulch, which is even more effective. Cultivation, well, I just talked about that you don't want to disturb the soil. So when you're weeding, you want to use a tool like this stirrup hoe or shuffle hoe that cuts off the weeds just at or below the soil line so that you're not disturbing the soil. And then there's flame weeders and steam weeders to control weeds as well, other physical controls. Then there's beneficial biological controls, which is the use of one living organism to manage another. The benefits include that they're very, very effective. They're typically free, they're environmentally friendly, and they're sustainable. If you get biological control started early in the season, they will typically provide control of those pests all season long, and in many cases from season to season. Now here's some critters that you may or may not have seen, and typically in the past you may have squished because you thought, oh, they might be a bad guy. Those are all ladybugs, just different parts of the life cycle. This big guy is eating a little guy, so that's a pretty good indication that the big guy is a good guy, and that is an assassin bug. And this little one, it's called a green lacewing. And as an adult, they only feed on pollen and nectar. But you saw her eggs earlier, those eggs that were on those long stalks. And those eggs then hatched into these guys. These are the aphid lines that I talked about. This is a new type bug, not much bigger than an aphid, but eats lots of aphids. And this is my favorite beneficial. This is a leatherwing or soldier beetle, very effective at controlling aphids in tall trees, so we don't have to use the nasty pesticides. Now, there are organic pest control products available. There is insecticidal soap. And please realize that when you purchase insecticidal soap and when you make it at home, they are not even close to being the same. The type of soap is different, okay? You only should be using the purchased insecticidal soaps. There are also horticultural oils made out of a variety of different kinds of materials. And realize that these two pesticides, the horticultural oil and the insecticidal soap, are contact poisons, and they have to hit the pest. They basically just keep the pest from breathing. And so you need really, really good coverage. They're easy on the beneficials because, for example, if a beneficial comes in and lands on the plant 2 seconds after you're done spraying, it's not going to hurt them. And please don't make homemade pesticides. A lot of people are recommending mixing Dawn dishwashing soap or any other kinds of soaps with water. And Dawn, for example, has solvents in it. A lot of these soaps have a variety of chemicals, but even if you get some really pure soaps, they are different from the insecticidal soaps. You spray them on the leaves and they will degrade. The leaf has a waxy coating on there that it uses to prevent pest problems, and that will be dissolved away if you make your homemade pesticides. And I also would recommend that you utilize the ready to use and ready to spray containers that you see in those two pictures so that you don't have to dilute the material. And then when you're done spraying, what do I do with the leftover material? Also encourage that you use selective pesticides, pesticides that only kill the pest, that will leave all the beneficials and everybody else out in the environment alone. The one that does the best job of that is called BT, Bacillus thuringiensis kerstaki. It only kills caterpillars. It's actually a naturally occurring caterpillar disease. And this is a stomach poison. So all you've got to do in this case is spray it on the plant. The critters will eat the leaves, and then within a half hour, they'll stop feeding and die about 3 to 4 days later, depending upon the weather. Very, very effective. This is much more effective than any of the more toxic materials, and it only kills the bad guys. Now, also in reference to preventing weeds, don't bring weeds in. In many cases, you might be utilizing a lawn maintenance service and they bring in their lawnmowers and other equipment. In many cases, that equipment harbors weed seeds, disease spores, and insect eggs. When you buy new plants, make sure there aren't any weeds growing in that container. Take a look at the foliage. Make sure there's not a disease or an insect on the foliage. Many people import soil. Well, typically you don't need to do that because you've got soil. You need to import soil conditioners. But in many cases, the soils can have weed seeds. Weeds will grow in that. It could have disease spores, insect eggs, and hard clay. You can also design your landscape to keep weeds out. Here we've got a lawn and a shrub bed, and we've got put in a mowing strip to keep the lawn from creeping into the shrub bed. And when you're utilizing a lawn and you're installing a new lawn, you've got children or you've got a dog, I encourage you to install with sod. Yeah, it's a little more expensive initially, but you put the sod down and you've got that dense, thick turf that it's going to be very, very difficult for weeds to grow. When you put down a seed, you've created a seed bed perfect for seeds growing, but there are weed seeds that are going to either be there already or get blown in, and you will have a weed problem that you're going to have to deal with. Now, you also want to prevent weeds from germinating. Now, we've got this wonderful little wish flower, produces up to 175 seeds. Now, this dandelion is really important early in the season because it allows the bees food, but don't let it go to seed, okay? Now, in lawns, what you want to do to prevent weeds is overseed. You want to put grass seed down, perhaps Dutch white clover, to create a dense, thick turf that will resist pests and weeds. You want to aerate every spring and fall, de-thatch when necessary, proper irrigation and fertilization, and proper mowing. Never mow off more than 1/3 of the blades. Mow when the lawn is dry so you don't spread diseases. And if you feel the need to utilize some sort of weed killer, there is an organic material called corn gluten meal that is a weed preventer as well as a fertilizer. When you've got weeds, it's really best to control them when they're young, and there are a wide variety of mechanical tools that will do the job. Here again, in that center top picture, we've got a winged weeder. Again, it just cuts the weeds off at or just below the soil surface. The one on the right is called a weed hound, and you can see it in action in the bottom center. And it's excellent for getting even the roots of various weeds, including things like dandelions. Then there's one of my favorites is the flame weeder as well as the steam weeder. Really, really good for, like on the picture on the left, getting the weeds in the cracks of the driveway. A lot of people use herbicides there. And then when it rains or if the irrigation gets over on the driveway or you wash your car, that pesticide gets washed directly into the curbs, in the gutters, and goes directly into our creeks and streams untreated. If you feel the need to spray, there are some selective non-selective herbicides. Vinegar, I don't recommend it because in order for it to be effective, it needs to be really, really strong, and it's a strong acid. And if you get it on your skin or in your eyes, it can do some real damage. There are also herbicides made out of essential oils, herbicidal soaps, and there's a relatively new one on the market. It's not organic, but it's herbicidal soap and malic hydrazade. And it will prevent, not only will it kill the weed, but it will prevent it from resprouting as well. Now, when we're talking about disease control, realize that most fungal organisms are beneficial. They're just a bunch of fun guys and fun gals. And when you manage them, realize that in order to have a disease problem, you need the 3 factors in the disease triangle. In the lower left, you need the pathogen, the pest. They're almost always there. But you also need a susceptible host, and you can use resistant varieties. And they need a favorable environment. And it's pretty easy to alter the environment around your plants to make it less susceptible to disease problems. Diseases are favored by shade and poor air circulation. So thin the plants out to allow more air and light in there. Properly irrigate, like we talked about before. And there are some organic fungicides, such as horticultural oil. And there's some that are made out of biological materials, Actinovate, Serenade, and my favorite, Monterey Complete Disease Control. These are primarily preventative products. So you got to be out there monitoring. And as soon as you see the problem, you need to start applying these materials. Or you need to look on your garden calendar and when were they a problem last year and start spraying about a week or so before. So, is pest prevention possible? It certainly is. When the soil is deficient, the plants are also deficient and weakened, and they lose their defenses. We've got to realize that we need to create a healthy soil. The soil is alive. There's all that soil biology, including the worms. And we need to kind of consider them part of the family. After all, they do help us put food on the table. Cheryl?
That's great, Steve. Thank you very much. A lot of good information. And we will answer questions in just a minute, but I first would like to remind everybody about this webinar. It was recorded. It is being recorded and available at Citrus Heights Water District's chwd.org/community. And check the website for future webinars. As we mentioned earlier, there is one coming up on May 13th, The Perfect Plants, What, Where, and When. So please sign up for that webinar. And another reminder, there is a second opportunity to win a gift card for completing the survey that you'll receive soon after this webinar. And that's a $25 gift card. So, and Steve, I do want to give a special thank you to you for giving us such a lot of great information. And of course, the Citrus Heights Water District for bringing you these educational webinars. So let's take a couple questions, or as many questions as you'd like, basically. But you know what, Steve, I wanted to say that I love that when you were talking about worms and how worms are nature's rototillers. I thought that was pretty cool. Because I know that a lot of times people will see worms and they'll go, we got to get rid of them fast. But I love that about being nature's rototillers.
Yep.
So here is one question, and that is, you mentioned de-thatching. What is that and how would I do it?
Yeah, I apologize for not having time to really explain it, but I figured people could learn about it, but now I'll explain. For a lot of your lawns, if you take a soil core, if you dig into the soil, you will find a layer of undecomposed organic matter, stems and stolons. And when it gets to be when it's less than a half-inch thick, it actually functions as a mulch. But when it gets over 3/4 of an inch, it repels water. It creates an ideal environment for insect pests and diseases, and water and air don't move through it. If some of you are old enough to remember thatch roofs, I am not that old, but you might remember that they used thatch for roofs for waterproofing their roofs. And so air, water won't go through there. So you need to remove that. And you can go to your local nursery. They have what are called de-thatch rakes that will dig it out. A lot of work. You can also go to the rental yards and they rent power dethatchers. Just make sure that when you bring in equipment, like I talked about earlier with the lawnmowers, make sure it's clean so you're not bringing in pests.
Great. Okay. Thank you. We've got some questions rolling in here, sort of related to that then, and I will get to these others too. Is there a safe way to aerate lawn and not damage sprinkler system below ground?
Typically, if the sprinkler system was installed properly, as long as you mark the sprinkler heads, and that's pretty easy to do, you turn on the system and you put a little flag there, it's not going to be a problem. I will tell you, when I managed landscapes, there was at least one place where when I was doing core aeration with a power machine, and when I'm talking about aeration, I'm talking about removing soil cores, not just punching a hole in there. You need to remove the soil cores. I did hit an irrigation line. I did not know it. But then when the folks turned on their irrigation system, and I apologized and I said, I'm sorry, but if it's properly installed, my tines only go down about 3, maybe 4 inches.
Okay.
And so if the irrigation system was installed properly, that's not going to be a problem.
Great.
If you've got if you're like underneath a tree and you're trying to aerate and you've got a drip system, for example, just an inch or two below, then you got to know where that is.
Right. Okay, great. What do you recommend for compacted soils?
Worm castings and worm casting tea. It's the biology that opens up your soils, and worm castings are very, very high in soil biology. And you don't have to till it in. You should not till it in because that's going to destroy the microbes and the structure. Just put it on top and water it in. And the worms will come up and other microbes come up to the soil surface, feed on it. And you will be surprised at how quickly that organic material will disappear that's on the soil surface. In lawn situations, you can still put a light top dressing of worm castings on the soil surface, and as soon as that material disappears, reapply it. You can also make what's called a compost tea. You put some worm castings in a lady's pantyhose or something like that. And then you put that in a bucket and then fill it with water, and then you use an aquarium pump. You have to pump air into that. And then after 24 hours, that liquid will just have a huge amount of soil biology. And then you can irrigate water the lawn or the landscape or the soil with that material, water it in, and you will be adding huge amounts of soil biology, which will then open up that clay soil.
Great. Where can people get worm castings?
Most nurseries sell them. Some of the hardware stores sell them. They're usually in bags, and you can create your own. You can grow a worm bin. I've got one sitting right behind me.
Okay, great. All right. Best way to irrigate your garden. I've tried drip, didn't work. Soaker hose was a bit better, but still not great.
The trick is, in most cases for gardens, drip irrigation is probably the best. The trick is you need to make sure that it's set up properly. You need to know what your soil's texture is. You need to know how far apart the drip emitters are. a good thing to do is lay them out there before you put the garden in, turn the irrigation system on when you're working on it, and see if the whole area gets covered where the root zone is. A lot of times, and then how, so you need it good coverage. And then how are you using it? A lot of people use it like their sprinklers, and their normal sprinklers. And so they run it for 5 or 10 minutes. And so they're actually putting in about 5 drops of water in it. So it's just, you need to know how to utilize a drip system. They need to run for a much longer time, hours instead of minutes.
So a couple of things that people can do is if you go to bewatersmart.info/webinars, there are additional webinars there, and there are recordings there as well about irrigation and soil health and selecting the right plants and all kinds of good information. I'll also encourage people to look up your local University of California Cooperative Extension, the Master Gardeners. Everybody has been doing in the various counties lots and lots of great webinars. So check out your Master Gardeners. Okay, we've got a few more minutes here, Steve.
One more point. As Rex said, water purveyors in many cases give free audits, or not audits, but where they come out and will help you with the efficiency of your irrigation system.
Very good reminder. So yes, do call for that and schedule your WaterWise house call. Yeah. And if you're not a Citrus Heights Water District customer, you can go to bewatersmart.info. If you don't know who your water provider is, or not sure, you can go there to find out who your water provider is and what rebates and incentives and services, and get to their website so you can find out more about getting that, because I love free, and they're great people who come out and help you. Here's another one. This one's about a bug. Harlequin bugs. Eat my tail. Oh no.
They're a little harder, and they have no relation to Harlequin romances.
So they eat the kale. Is there a specific solution better than hunting and squishing them?
That's actually one of the better ones. Really? If you utilize insecticidal soap, especially when they're young, it works pretty well if you hit the bug. That's the key. But you also have to realize, like we talked about earlier, if you've got bugs, there's something going on in your soil that's not right. I didn't have time to say, but it could be something as easy as the pH. And so you can go to your local nursery and get a pH test kit and find out where your pH is. And in many cases, just adjusting the pH will allow more nutrients to get into your plant, making it more resistant to the pest problems.
Excellent.
And then if you do a search on the internet for UCIPM, they have all sorts of great information. If you know what the pest is, they've got information on the individual pests. If you don't know what the pest is, but you know the plant, you can go there, find the plant, and they list the common pests and how to deal with them.
That's a great resource. Yeah. And there's a section on taking care of your lawns as well. Yeah. So that's a great resource.
And they've got a section on how to identify beneficial insects. It's an incredible website.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so this participant has a 3-year-old Meyer lemon tree that is just a few flowers and the leaves are yellowish now. It did not make any fruit yet. How do you get a healthy soil from an unhealthy one?
Well, ideally, you want to do a soil test, find out what your soil needs and doesn't need, and then fertilize appropriately. Use only organic fertilizers. And if you got yellowing, part of the problem could be the pH, which you can do with just a test kit, and then adjust the pH. When the pH is too high, nutrients aren't available. Also, citrus need good drainage, and we've got a lot of clay in our soils. And so if the soil is very, very wet, it will cause those kinds of conditions, the yellowing of the leaves. Also realize that the microbes primarily provide the nitrogen in an organic system. And with a cold soil in the wintertime, there's not much nitrogen there. So what you can do to supplement that is to spray with something like a liquid fish fertilizer on the leaves, and that will immediately get the nitrogen into the plant.
Okay, great. So we'll try to do these other questions quickly here so we can end in about 4 minutes. And you probably know this just like that. When is it a good time to trim an orange tree?
Typically, orange trees don't need much pruning. You basically want to just go in there and prune crossing branches that are going to be rubbing and potentially creating a wound. But the proper time is basically now. You want to prune immediately after the potential of frost. You don't want to prune in fall because you could potentially be opening it up to more frost damage. It would encourage more rapid new growth that would be more sensitive to the frost.
Okay. And then also I know that the Sacramento Master Gardeners have some great online resources about edibles and fruit trees and so forth. Let's see, my Bermuda grass lawn is not doing well at all. It is still yellow, dry looking. What do you do? Well, it sounds like this person likes the Bermuda grass. So
Bermuda grass in our area is the most adaptive grass there is. We just haven't, the soil is probably still just too cold. I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot. You could give it, some organic lawn fertilizer if you wanted. You could spray on something like liquid fish along with a good quality seaweed fertilizer. I like Maxi Crop. And that will start giving the roots and the biology what the plants are going to need when the weather warms up a little bit and the soil warms up.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Thank you. Someone's asking about current rebate programs to replace their front lawn with water efficient plants. And I do know that the city of Sacramento has a rebate program. The city of Roseville has a rebate program. But I don't think Citrus Heights Water District does, right, Rex? Okay. But you could go to bewatersmart.info and find out who your water provider is or contact them if you know. You can get more information about rebates and incentive programs there. And our last question, Steve.
I might add, Cheryl, that the County of Sacramento also has a program this year for that.
Excellent.
So if you go to the County of Sacramento's website and just punch in rebates, it pulls right up. So there's a few districts and the county out there. So
good, great. I'm glad they started that up again. Sure. Good. So Steve, what do you recommend for snails that isn't beer or salt?
Well, never use salt. Never put salt in the soil. It's death to the soil, death to all of the soil biology. There's a material if you want a product. There's a material. One brand is Sluggo, but there are numerous brands out there. You want to look where it says active ingredients, real easy to find on the label. Where the printing is really small and you need a microscope to read it. That's where it has the active ingredients. And you want to look for iron phosphate, and that's all it should contain. And it does an excellent job of controlling slugs and snails. Works very, very well.
Thank you, Steve. And I just want to give one more reminder. Please fill out your surveys for an opportunity to win a gift certificate, a gift card, and sign up for other webinars. Thank you for joining us today. Rex, would you like to say anything else in closing?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you everybody else out there that participated. What a great talk he had today. And if you'd like to refresh your thoughts on this, you can always go to our website and view it later at your leisure. So thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Bye for now.